citizen try. No, don't. No. Okay, I think we're streaming now. I have to restart it to get it to work. Let's go ahead then and finish a couple things about the Phoenician Empire. And
we're not in Western Civ anymore. Yes, we are.
we can never escape. Somebody in, so I did put down, here's the deal about Wednesday's notes. They're really concerned that on Wednesdays students will not be engaged. Whatever that means. And for AP US History, I was having them turn in their notes for Wednesday just to give a little credit. I did it for you guys too. So just turn in a picture of your notes. Most of you have already done it. But if you have your notes from yesterday, just quick take a picture, pop it in on Teams. Sound good? I'll give you a little credit for it. It's an easy way for me to make sure you're here, but also reward you for doing that. And did the broadcast work okay? There were some troubles in AP US, and I think Western Civ was fine, wasn't it? Remember you watched yesterday Western Civ?
I watched part of it.
Part of it?
Sorry.
That's a...
Mr. Patrick, the baby Annie really likes to watch the videos.
Who does?
The baby Annie.
Oh, you're kidding me.
He loves to watch that.
And then I did.
How old?
He's one. He turned one like 2 weeks ago.
Just watching that.
Yeah, he loves to watch them.
That's a good kid.
He's learning a lot. He's really educated now.
Oh, he's ready to...
Yeah. He's basically ready for college.
Speaking of yesterday's notes and watching class, what was it called when... Oh, shoot. Everybody... we're just going to... What is it called when... or the plan by the United States to build these essentially concentration camps for the Vietnamese, so they would the South Vietnamese civilians. What were those concentration camps? Yeah, strategic hamlets, which was such a dumb idea. It was so dumb.
Okay, Sarah Heller suggested that we watch this at 1.15 speed.
It's so funny.
It's way funnier.
What?
I'm for president, I'm for president, I'm for president.
Here we go!
President, you like
Okay, so Kennedy called himself a what? He's a Berliner, but a jelly donut. Mentioned deterrence. We got through the Cuban Missile Crisis. So don't forget these reasons JFK committed. It was the whole idea about credibility. We will be a credible defense. Don't forget civil rights. Don't forget the domino theory. We mentioned the strategic hamlet. We got to here, right? Or was it here?
Yeah.
And Kennedy, and they mentioned this in the video Fog of War. Kennedy suggested, am I on? I think so. I'm checking my monitor. I'm there, yay. There I come barging into the screen. Kennedy, they talked about removing 1,000 troops, but that was partially because we just killed them, or we were involved, and now we got to make it look like we're winning the war. That executing them was going to help the war effort. But also they could say going into the election we're winning. Johnson would repeal that and was immediately saying, how can we lose, or what if we do lose, we pull troops out, then it looks like we're losing the war. It's one of those that, this was just a stumble and a bumble into it. But one of the big battles that shows you the problems that occurred with the South Vietnamese fighting the Viet Cong was the Battle of Ap Bac, right here. And the reason why I put this in there, because first off, I want to show you the West Point map from the Battle of Ap Bac, because all of you now can see exactly what happened, right? But why does this map bring me comfort? Arrows. Maps with arrows comfort me at night. I can go to sleep. I can wake up knowing somewhere out there are maps with arrows to protect me. Okay, the map's a horrible map. It's what this map, they tell you nothing. But here was Viet Cong. And their plan at Atbach was, okay, this is in 1964. American advisors are essentially leading, telling South Vietnamese troops how to fight this battle. And the plan was basically this. They would sweep in with helicopter-borne troops. They would land, surprising the Viet Cong. What would the Viet Cong do? Run away. And coming in behind would be mechanized forces, armored personnel carriers, some tanks, and a blocking force. And they'd run them into that force and destroy them. And this is what they would soon call, at first they called it spear and net. You know what spear and net means? Obviously, you're not medieval hunters. Right? Who's a medieval hunter? People go through the woods with spears. And you chase the animals out with spears. The animals run away from people with spears, right? And who's hiding in trees where the animals are running away?
Net.
Well, net people who are shaped like nets and they jump on them. No, men with nets and they jump the net on. And that was the plan. They called it spear and net. Well, spear and net, for reasons that obviously should be very obvious to us here, that analogy didn't connect to people in the United States. It didn't sound like a good strategy. It sounded like spear and net. What the heck are you talking about? This would evolve, both words apply, to search and destroy. Search them out, find them, use your superior fire to blow them away. And that would be the tactics. So they tried it here, relatively small units. You see these lines here, that's a platoon, a company. That's what they mean. We didn't know that, I'm just telling you that's. So with that is the actual battlefield. That's after the battle. That's actually kind of a cool picture. This is where the armed personnel carriers were. This is where the fighting was. Did it work? It was a disaster. An unmitigated disaster. Here are U.S. Army helicopters. They flew in the South Vietnamese. These were advisors, but they're taking hits too. These are the armored personnel carriers. That's at Atbach. And the armored personnel carriers, they could hold about 11 men, have a little bit of an armor protection, like a big box. It's kind of what it looks like, doesn't it? And a machine gun on top. And they would drive those in, and the whole idea was they would use these to block. Well, they couldn't cover the whole area. It didn't work at all, and there's something else. The first time they used a lot of these. What's the armor made out of? They wanted them light so they could transport one or two on a plane. Steel was too heavy. They were about 13 millimeters. It's about 13 millimeters of aluminum armor. Did anyone say aluminum?
I said aluminum foil.
Oh, aluminum foil. You're about right. Now, aluminum foil, okay, maybe it might keep like a small arm, like a rifle, from getting through. But what happens to aluminum? One of the reasons why aluminum requires a lot of energy, but part of the reason why they can make things like thin cans out of it and be very light is because it doesn't take much heat to melt them. So let's say they run over a landmine and that explodes. What happens to the aluminum at relatively low temperature? It melts and then splatters. And then as it splatters, it hardens into these horrific pieces of metal called shrapnel. And what does it do to the people inside this box? Can you imagine what's going to happen to them? It just leaves a bloody mess. You see the pictures of these so-called armored personnel carriers, and all the men are riding on the top. They'd rather face a sniper than face a landmine. A bunch of them got blown up. The other ones ran off. They didn't have enough firepower. And then, once their armored personnel carriers start blowing up, the Viet Cong just overran them. And it was a disaster. And this was the summer of '64. And you might think, oh, this is just a battle. Summer of '64. What was the incident where North Vietnamese torpedo boats attacked two U.S. ships? The Tonkin Gulf. That was just a few weeks after this. Nothing happens in a vacuum. They had these horrible series of defeats. This is the biggie. This is the one like, okay, we'll show our way of fighting and show we can win the war. And it failed. And now we got to show we can win this war because LBJ wants to get reelected. Nothing happens in a vacuum. They're not individual little events. These are not factoids. It all comes together. This is just one example. And so, by 1964, the Viet Cong were being resupplied by North Vietnamese. As the U.S. sent advisors, North Vietnam sent advisors. What was the name of the trail the U.S. would call it? Did you see it? Ho Chi Minh Trail. Oh, we're going to have a quiz tomorrow. And it's going to be online. It'll just be on Teams. I'll just throw it on there. So we just do it sometime over the weekend. It'll be like another 8-question one. Sound good over the reading? Do you want more than that? You want one really big question with really big font. Okay, so it really looked like the summer of 1964 that the South Vietnamese government collapsed. And this is the government now the United States is literally tied to, chained by the neck to, shackled to a corpse, sometimes they would say. We have no choice but to support this government, and it's a corrupt military dictatorship. And so all of these things are happening at once, and yet it's an election year. Please be the right slide. Oh, ARVN is the Army of the Republic of Vietnam. That's the South Vietnamese Army. And talk a little bit about how corrupt they were. Much of the war was trying to make the ARVN less corrupt. By the way, yeah, Army of the Republic of Vietnam. North Vietnam is the Democratic Republic of Vietnam. That's North. Now it's the Democratic Republic of Vietnam is the whole country. They were actually, by then, a pretty brutal dictatorship, but they used the word democratic. East Germany would be like the German Democratic Republic. And armed with American weapons, the big issue with them is they were a drafty army. It was hard to keep men in the uniform. Officers were corrupt. The men did not trust their officers. They had a big morale problem the entire war. In fact, much of the war was trying to figure out a way to get them to fight. But back to the United States. Lyndon Johnson is now president. And Lyndon Johnson's domestic program to finish the New Deal, FDR's New Deal, was called the Great Society. He wanted to do all that Kennedy wanted and more. He wanted to pass as many laws as possible to make the country, as in his vision, better. End poverty, have civil rights, and a general cultural improvement of the United States. He thought big, which is certainly not the way people think now. And there he is at the University of Michigan. He's at the commencement address, and that's where he introduced the Great Society. And so Johnson, the new president, wanted to win an election on his own merit to get his Great Society, and that's all he cared about. You would start with health care for the elderly, but eventually health care for everybody. He eventually wanted free college for everybody, which thankfully we don't have, right? Whew! That was a close one. That's me being sarcastic. Okay? In my day, we had a tough. No, you guys have it a lot tougher than me. You buying that? I wouldn't. I'm tough. No, when it comes to college, you guys do, that's for sure. What's that? Yeah. A teleprompter? So when the first teleprompters would literally be just here, and they'd scroll the screen down on paper. It just scroll down. And you had a little button, you could stop it. Now it's projected on a glass shield. See those glass shields on the side? Where every politician uses. I've tried to look at a teleprompter. They're pretty wild. You stay on stage with one. One here, and one in the middle. And you kind of, the good ones can do it and never look like they're reading it. The bad ones end up just reading one like this. It's hard, but you can't see It's projected in such a way you can't see it from the audience, but at that angle you can see it where you're standing. Probably you've seen ones do that. The good ones can do it. The best story about a teleprompter was in 1998 at the State of the Union address, and Bill Clinton's teleprompter went off. And he had an hour and a half speech and it went off. Literally, right before he said the first words, boom. And he did the speech from memory. Almost verbatim. In fact, he did it, he ad-libbed, and came back to the spot he quit from memory. That doesn't make you smart. But boy, what a gift. Wouldn't that be nice to have that kind of memory? And not get distracted? Even if you have a pretty good memory, it's easy to kind of go off like, oh, I have no idea now where I'm at. So, Lyndon Johnson wants this. But he can't get it if he looks soft on communism, can he? He can't get this. So, we have this horrible Battle of Atbach. It looks like South Vietnam might fall. He has to look tough on communism to get this. And Kennedy made Vietnam important. Johnson doesn't want to be the president who destroyed Kennedy's legacy. So, there's one more little thing. There are two major Civil Rights Acts that Johnson is going to get through. The Civil Rights Act of 1964, that summer, the Civil Rights Act was being debated on in the Senate. The second longest filibuster in history, in 60 days. The Democratic Party was very weird. The Democratic Party, Northern Democrats were for civil rights, Southern Democrats were against civil rights. And then eventually that group of Democrats in the South would become Republicans, but that's down the road. They were fighting against this, and Johnson had to get this bill passed to end legal segregation. The most important civil rights action since the Civil War, since the 14th Amendment. An incredible process. But he knew if he couldn't get this passed, he couldn't get this passed if we lost in Vietnam. Yeah.
Isn't it the 13th Amendment?
14th Amendment was civil rights. 13th Amendment ended slavery. But the 14th Amendment guaranteed civil rights for everybody. But good point. Obviously the 13th and the 15th are really important too. But I was just thinking purely in terms of rights. This is such a massive bill. And it didn't address the voting rights. That's underlying, so it's one step at a time. Johnson knows the Great Society will tumble if I don't get civil rights. People are protesting in the streets, they're marching for their rights, they're pushing it, and Johnson has to get it. He can't look soft on Vietnam. All this stuff happened at the same time where you get, and then of course the election. And he's running against Barry Goldwater. Barry Goldwater, the beginning of the modern Republican Party would begin with Barry Goldwater. Ultra-conservative. In fact, all Barry Goldwater cared about was war. His most popular thing would be when he talked about how much he hated civil rights. But he didn't care about that. He just wanted to go to war. And he was saying, we got to go blow Vietnam up. We're at war. And Johnson knew, if I can make him look extreme and get civil rights passed, and be tough on Vietnam, but don't blow up the world, I can win re-election. Or a better way to look at it is election on my own merit. Because he took over because Kennedy died. He needs to win his own election. And so there's Hubert Humphrey as vice presidential nominee. I just like these scientists and engineers and physicians for Humphrey. That's a very busy bumper sticker. And so he could run as a moderate. And so with that, his choice was, and I think I'm a little bit out of order here. I must have moved the slide. Give me 1 sec. Everybody relax. Act like you're busy. Someone comes in. We're filming this, so act busy. How do you act busy? You glare. You do a lot of... Anybody have a clipboard? That helps too. Sorry, I got out of order. Let's go back now. The Tonkin Gulf. Okay. So I don't need to cover this really, because we covered this. Remember, we talked about this in the fog of war. Do you remember the Tonkin Gulf resolution? And the thing about the Tonkin Gulf was that U.S. Let's take this map down. I don't want it to fall on my face. That's bad for teacher morale. So, they're doing poorly. Ho Chi Minh Trail. It's also called the Sihanouk Trail, but there are also ships for smuggling in goods for the Viet Cong. So North, South Vietnamese commandos were attacking bases to try to stop the smuggling in of supplies in North Vietnam. Now remember, this is a civil war in South Vietnam, but they're attacking up here. U.S. ships are supporting them, including the Maddox. And that's when the Maddox is attacked by North Vietnamese torpedo boats. Excuse me. Sometimes with the mask, has anyone had this? Your nose starts to run a little bit. And, yeah. Dressers like, yeah. No, you don't have that?
That happens to me all the time.
Thank you for agreeing. That's why we brought you back.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that first attack, tainted by an illegal attack. This is illegal. They're not at war. So by any international rules, what the United States and South Vietnam are doing are illegal. Now, everybody's fudging the rules. But by definition, 2 days later, oh, that's the actual picture of it. You can see, those are the torpedo boats. Torpedo boats are fast ships. They're like a very large speedboat. They're not armored. They're probably made of wood. They have cannon and torpedoes. They're just more like patrol boats. 4 days later, the Maddox and the Turner Joy go up there. That's the Turner Joy and the Maddox. The Turner Joy is actually at Bremerton Naval Base now in Washington. There's a it's an exhibition. You go on board the ship and realize how small and claustrophobic being on board a ship would be. I can't do it. I would not fit in this. But they both went back, and that's when they claimed their attack. You remember from the video? They claimed they're an attack, and there are 5, there are 10, there are 100 torpedoes in the water. And then they said, "Are you certain you were attacked?" "Yes." "Maybe." The second attack, no commandos. It's a few weeks after Atbah. The Civil Rights Bill is just being voted on. All this is happening at once. What a summer, huh? This is big time. And so what happened? It got attacked, and Johnson, he gets it from McNamara, and their reaction is, yes. Okay, this is what we want, because now we can show we're tough. They ordered a bombing strike. Please have the bombing strike. This is from Newsweek, or Time Magazine a little bit later, and it's showing how these are the first attacks on the Maddox and the Turner Joy, and then there were U.S. aircraft carriers. So we had part of the 7th Fleet. We had 3 aircraft carriers offshore. So they were planning on something. If they did attack, we were ready to retaliate. Johnson ordered bombing missions. In fact, the first U.S. planes would be hit here, and the first prisoners of war would be taken. Which, by the way, was a really touchy situation, because we're not at war in North Vietnam. Yet, at this time, we as the U.S. aren't at war. Yet we bombed them. What do you call somebody who attacks your country and is not at war? A terrorist and a war criminal. Now, that doesn't mean they had to treat them horribly, but that would be their justification. These guys are war criminals. And by definition, they were. But that doesn't change the fact that these were men following the orders who thought they were following legal orders because they were told they were legal. Lots of problems in wars, aren't there? Lots of what ifs and have yous. So, and they got the Tonkin Gulf Resolution. And the Tonkin Gulf Resolution gave the president a blank check to do anything the president wanted to stop aggression in Southeast Asia. Wow. You can do anything you want to stop aggression in Southeast Asia. It passed unanimously in the House of Representatives, and all but 2 senators voted against it. So this was an overwhelming support. Does anybody want to guess who wrote the bill? Johnson had the bill written 6 months before. They wanted it ready in case something happened. Why? So they could look tough on communists for the election. But do you see the word that's so important on that newspaper article? What?
Retaliation.
Not just retaliation, even just before that. Limited. We're not going to blow the world up. We're being strong, but rational. You can trust Johnson. He's tough on communism. The Civil Rights Bill had just passed. He's going to be tough on communism, but he's not going to blow the world up. And that would help lead to then the ability to portray Goldwater as what he was, a warmonger who talked casually about dropping atomic bombs into the bathroom of the Kremlin. Not as a joke. Hey, if we got to do it, we got to do it. We should do it. Which is insane. And that gives the greatest campaign commercial ever. Some of you have seen this. It's awesome. Also, I was watching this the other day and I was thinking about it now. You know, this girl is probably mid-60s now. It's kind of weird to think about when you get to that. Here we go. If you haven't seen this commercial, you will. He landed on his feet.
6, 8, 9,
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. These are the
Here's
stakes
Johnson.
to make a world in which all of God's children can live, or to go into the dark. We must either love each other or we must die.
Vote for President Johnson on November 3rd. The stakes are too high for you to stay home.
Okay, so the probably the most famous political commercial in history, and it was only ran one time. One time. And that's all it took. The most popular television show at that time was the NBC Movie of the Week. And it ran one time during that. How else could you watch a movie that was in the theater, already out of the theaters? They would show it on TV, and it was a big deal. And those just ended like overnight. The ABC Movie of the Week, that was a big deal. Then in the mid-80s, gone. Just gone. I mean, you can watch movies on other television shows, but not on the major networks. Why? Why mid-80s? You don't remember the heady days of the 80s? I do. VCRs, videotapes. Just overnight, videotapes. So, one more time. Isn't that a great commercial? And so, that kept it going. South Vietnam survived, and they were elected. Now, Johnson understood one thing. The Democratic Party is going to be split in half by this. one of the biggest victories in history of elections, Johnson would win. It worked. Johnson got reelected with this formula of being tough in Vietnam, but not going over the top. Being the peacemaker, but still rational. And his programs were still overwhelmingly popular. People loved the legacy of the New Deal. And Republicans wanted to get rid of it. And so they could expand on it, at least for a while. Then things would begin to change. You'll see something big here, right? They switched. This group voted for Democrats from 1876 all the way till 1964. Civil rights, they switched to Republican Party. In fact, this is the election you can see where the Republican Party would become a very kind of mixed party to a Southern party, which it is today. It is a Southern party today. Yeah.
Wait, so just like Johnson supporting the civil rights movement, like kind of just like one of the main reasons why the Southern Democrats switched to Republicans?
Yes, that's the reason.
Um,
And the Republicans, they called it the Southern Strategy, but they took advantage of it. A pretty cynical political move, but really effective move. Yeah.
So like his re-election was his second term, right? Even though he wasn't elected president, and like his first term, he was just elected vice president.
Yeah, this technically will count as his first term.
Oh, it does kind of.
So he could have ran again in 68.
Okay.
In fact, he did run again and dropped out.
Okay.
In fact, if, let's say your president or vice president, the president dies,
Mm-hmm.
as long as that sitting president has been been president for more than 1 year,
Okay.
you can actually run for 2 more terms.
Oh, really?
So like, anybody here remember the president in 1841 who died a month into office?
William Harrison.
Yeah, Harrison. John Tyler became president. He could, under today's laws, he could run for 2 more terms.
Okay.
Back then they could run for unlimited, but. And so this was a massive Democratic sweep. By the way, if I showed you the election of '72, it's almost the exact opposite, and the Republicans won. And so it's been pretty different. We're a little bit more divided. There's clearly more Democrats, but today. But in the smaller states, there's a lot more Republicans. And our Senate and Electoral College are tipped towards smaller states. That's where we're at today. What is it? If anybody's under the age of 49 or under, in their age group, every election, anybody who's been 49 or under, every presidential election, the Republicans have only won the majority once. And yet they run government. So it's pretty interesting how that has happened. That's a legacy of our Constitution. That might be a good story to do in like the couple weeks before the election. Talk a little bit about that. So, play coup. Oh, the video's gone. Well, I'm just going to do it. Right after the election, Johnson is elected, just almost like, yes, we got this euphoria. Because they're going to start getting bills passed of the Great Society. I mean, this was an overwhelming mandate. And South Vietnam blew up. Absolutely blew up in January and February, right after the election. So we're going into 65. This would have been the golden moment, by the way. We should go back one step. After this, it's safe to say that Johnson is popular. I mean, he won over 61% of the popular vote. That's unheard of, literally unheard of. This would have been a great time for Johnson to do what? We have met all our objectives in Vietnam, South Vietnam, and we have won and pulled out. That would have been the perfect time. But he couldn't do it because he had in his mind this moderate that's winning for me. There's other bills I want passed. I don't want to all of a sudden have things blow up and they blame me. I want to keep it going. The problem is, I thought they did a good job in the fog of war. Well, then we need 1,000, 2,000, and then... So, play coup. Play coup is a base. Right here, in the Central Highlands. This highland area, and that's where the U.S. had an air base. And they were using this air base to bomb South Viet Cong. and also in the Ho Chi Minh Trail. It's being defended by South Vietnamese troops, ARVN. Viet Cong came in and did a combination of kind of a suicide attack, where they had people either dressed up as ARVN troops or workers there had blew themselves up. But the big one was they came in with mortars. Do you know what a mortar is?
Isn't it like, shoots those? It's hard to explain.
It's one of the- and if you know what it is, it makes it almost harder sometimes. So it will shoot a shell, and it will lob a shell almost straight up and down like that. So it have plunging fire, and it's a really lightweight weapon, so 3 men can carry one. And so it lobs shells, not big shells, but since it lobs, where's most armor? On the side. You know, most defenses are on the side, so you come down on the top. Does that make sense? Mortars came in, knocked out half of the planes at Play Coup, and killed 20 airmen and wounded over 150. You get the point. A horrible attack. The South Vietnamese had let their guard down. Humiliating attack right here. There was another attack up here near Hue, and another attack here at Tang Hu. The big one's Play Coup. All these attacks are happening right away. What do you do? What do you do? Do you send more troops? Do you pull troops out? Do you send more advisors? Do you go home and cry? Yeah, that's actually probably the best move, but exactly. Correct. Okay, we're froze. Just imagine we're looking at a map.
Yeah, we're looking at.
What happened? Oh, I accidentally got rid of my Phoenician world. Like the sound effects? Here is Life magazine. And this, April 1965. And we're not in combat yet. And there is a door gunner with a horrifically wounded U.S. Army soldier. And we're not at combat. They must have just dropped Viet Cong, or I'm sorry, South Vietnamese forces in to fight the Viet Cong. We're taking a lot of casualties. This brings it very home. It's actually a terrifying picture, isn't it? Johnson sees something like that, and those wounded men, he said, we pull out. What will their families say? Exactly. Or, more importantly, to Johnson's point of view, what will his political enemies say? And you don't get your great society. He probably still got Johnson was Lyndon Johnson. I mean, the guy was amazing at getting bills passed. Those of you who heard some of the stories I told last year, he was an interesting guy. So they initiated Operation Rolling Thunder. And that's an awesome place to quit. This stumbling into the war is one of the most fascinating. I liken it to a tragedy. I liken it to this Greek tragedy where you just see it getting worse and worse. So I'll post that quiz. I don't know what time. It won't take long. I got half made. So it's just on the next 2 sections. There'll be another very basic quiz. 8 questions or 9 questions. Multiple choice. Some of it will be uphill. Should be fine.
Are we all the way through that pack again?
I think we have one more packet.
Okay.
One more reading. The end of the war. The latest.
Okay.
So the first 2 were the quiz. The next 2 will be this quiz. And we're going to talk about the draft. We'll pull that out. We got a thing on tech. So Eddie, you're pretty much caught up. You're watching.
Yeah.
You're good. All right. I'll see you tomorrow.
When you were talking about the PowerPoint, that's for the interview, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's only if you have pictures or something. to
Oh,
show.
okay.
You don't have to make a PowerPoint if you're just going to talk about what they talked about.
I see. Okay. Gotcha.
But I know some people have pictures, and this is happened in the past. It's the easiest way to show pictures.
Okay. Got it.
Or somebody else brought last year, or 2 years ago, they had all these just amazing things this guy had. They didn't want to bring it in. So he took pictures, put it on the PowerPoint. That you need.
Got it. Thanks.
You bet. See you tomorrow.
Thank you.
Right when you find work. So hungry. Whoever's watching here, I'm a hungry.